We're the women of Black Lives Matter, Greater New York. Hi, everybody. Today, welcome to our show. We're the women of Black Lives Matter, Greater New York. My name is Erica Ewing, AKA Alicia Francis.
I'm Katassia Williams.
I'm Kamala Millwood.
So today we're here to talk about a topic that really has been weighing in our spirits for a while. And really, it wasn't until we got wake-up calls from people in our community that knew that we were working with a lot of issues. And someone wanted to share a personal issue with me where their daughter was being trafficked. She was missing. She was a runaway. She went to the police. At first, they couldn't even tell you that, it was trafficking. They said she'll come back home. And then she wasn't home. And then it started to spiral and the cycle began. And then finally, she was able to do a sting operation in her house in Harlem, in our backyard. And she was able to rescue her daughter. But this had been going on for months. The pattern was really, really difficult to track. How she was being coerced into the actual trafficking ring, but also that she was coming home and then leaving for days, coming back. So it was almost hard when you would go to the cops to say she's missing or she's been kidnapped, but then she comes home 3 weeks later. So what was going on? It wasn't until she talked to a friend who actually works with teens and youth in this city that she said, how do you feel, or how would you feel if I told you she might be trafficked? And it takes me a lot to say that, because what does it mean to be trafficked? And so basically to be sexually exploited, raped multiple times, all for money. And the way in which it happened, and happened to a couple of survivors I talked about, in our communities, it looks like he's your boyfriend. He's someone that you can trust. He's someone that when your family turns their back or the church turns their back on you, they're right there. They're right there in your backyard, and they're making you feel nice. And one thing is your needs are being met. And I think that was really interesting. It wasn't like they were going and they weren't being treated well or wearing the nicest clothes or the nicest, their nails, their hair, everything was done until the day they said, you owe me. You owe me for all that I've done for you. And therefore, it's not only the guilt, but it's really that whole thing called coercion, which there's theories about this, where through coercion, there's a part of you that you feel you are indebted to them. And then the fear is on, if you leave them, if you don't say anything to them, then you're abused, assaulted, your family's threatened. And so we really talked about, well, wait a minute, there were 64,000 girls missing. I started doing research, as we always do. And well, where is this coming from? So you look at this article from 2014 saying 64,000 girls have been missing. But then what's happening now? Then the DC cases started coming out, girls are missing. Then you heard about girls in the Bronx missing. So it's not something that I think wasn't happening. I think we're more aware of it, but we always have to question why. Why are we aware of it? And then when we do become aware of it, why is it now that because we've been so engrossed in learning and training and talking to experts and survivors, you start to have to argue with your colleagues that it's a scam, it's fake. Media sensationalize it, alternative facts. But we know with a lot of our history that we have to do the work. Yes. And so, Kim, I really want you to talk about some of the work that we thought about doing in terms of where does this mythology come from?
Yes, I first want to address that the 64,000 girls that are missing, black girls are missing. Gwen Ifill, late Gwen Ifill, newscaster, she coined the term white women syndrome. Because the women and the girls missing are black, there's a tendency to downplay that, and that's a problem. Unless you're blonde hair, blue-eyed, come from an upper-class family, this is not what people want to hear in the news. The majority of our mass media outlets are run by wealthy billionaire, Caucasian men. So they determine what is going to be placed on the news. In addition, we have a lot of time to hear people's names who are missing who are Caucasian. So we know those names. It's just in certain news settings, you have the newscasters, pretty much it's an 80 to 20% in terms of the African American, the gathering of that to the Caucasian. So therefore, what is of interest is not our girls. So we felt it was important, especially the month of April. This is called shopping season.
Yes, it is.
This is when people are out on high alert looking to snatch up our girls, looking to grab them for sex trafficking purposes. Who knows if it's for organ trafficking purposes? This is the month where this is happening. So the call was urgent. The call was necessary. So the women of Black Lives Matter of Greater New York felt we need to do something and do something now. So that's where we came up with this march that we're going to be having on Sunday, April 9th at the Fearless Girl, starting at 2 o'clock. Because people are now yet again insulting us and telling us this is fake. Because then again, they want to take away any attention at all that brings to the forefront the importance of getting these girls back home. We're not going to stop. We're not going to give up. We're going to keep pressing and pushing to find these girls and bring them back in. If one girl sees this march and then wants to come home, we did our job. So fake news, you can stay there. We're going to do what we were meant to do, and we're going to stand strong and bring these girls home.
Yeah.
The U.S. government spends 300 times more money on drug trafficking than they spend on sex trafficking.
Wow.
Yet we know that these criminals make a lot more money selling our girls than they do selling crack or cocaine. We must put an end to this.
Yes, we do.
The Amber Alert system does not represent us, but we will ring the alarm.
Right.
This is not the time to stay quiet or just mind your business. We have to ring the alarm. We will not sweep this issue under the rug. Those days are over. It's done with. When it comes to our girls, the girls in our community, the girls who are forgotten, and plain simple, that the news don't want to cover, we're going to continue talking about our girls. We will not stop.
And I want to just add, you know, this city is a unique city. I have to give it to this city because they were trying to talk about human trafficking and sex trafficking. But for some reason it got away and people thought it happened in Europe. It was somewhere far away from us. But we have programs here in the city like GEMS who does service women who've been exploited and sex trafficked. But they've been doing it since 1998 when they were founded by a woman who was sexually exploited. And at this point, the numbers are increasing in the sex trafficking industry and human trafficking industry because of social media. Social media has turned it up. Social media now, these people can get into your bedroom. When you FaceTime and you say, hi, how you doing? They're in your kitchen. They see what you have and what you don't have. That's part of the manipulation. That's part of the coercion and the threat. And I want to say this and speak to this. You know when you see the videos of girls in a sexual act, when you say, oh my gosh, she's such a thought, right? These things are planned. They tape these acts. They drug these girls. They rape them. And they show them to the world so that she's afraid, so that she is turned away. So people say, oh, that's what she's doing. Oh, she's on a bad track. The church turns them away, the school turns them away, her friends turn her away, and her family.
And these girls also become victims. We will stop placing the blame on these young ladies. Yes, there are children who run away from home, but we cannot continue to say, oh, she's just a runaway. That's not the issue. We know that in less than 4 days, children who run away from home become victims of sex trafficking.
Definitely, that's in the stats.
This
That's in
is
the
not
stats.
fake news. In 2016, the NYPD reported a 50% increase in the amount of cases of sex trafficking. This is not fake news. This is not a different issue. We have to address this head on for what it is.
And the tactics are just kind of scary. When I hear, well, we can't have phones in schools because the school says no phone. Mom doesn't really want my cell phone in school. I sneak my cell phone, but where do I keep it? I go to the local bodega. They charge it for me, but they charge you for it, okay? Charging you for your phone. Okay, how many kids really have enough money every day to pay the bodega per hour for their phone? Eventually you owe them. And what happens then? Now you're desperate. You can't tell your mom. You can't tell the school. And guess what? Someone knows what you've been doing, and now you're trapped. Why? Because the frontal lobe is not developed yet. Good decision making doesn't happen till 26 years old. That's the time an adult with no trauma, never experienced trauma, can make, I guess, a reasonable decision. Because we all make mistakes. None of us are perfect. But when you talk about child development, you're saying they're not even developed yet. They're making decisions. They are children. We can get dressed up, but they're still children. They're underage. You're having underage sex, and you're being exploited, and they don't see their money. I mean, think about some of the survivors we talked to that abducted children, took children, said, oh, I got that girl for body parts. They wanted blonde hair. I know she's going to go for $7,200 in Canada, $4,500 in Florida, $2,500 in New York. This is slavery.
It is.
Our kids are not for sale. Our boys are not for sale. Boys, it's happening too. Don't think they're not being trafficked. And what I think was more astonishing, and a lot of the workshops we went to, the trainings that we went to, was a lot of the abusers are women.
Yes.
And most of them were trafficked. And then they turn into or graduate or however it goes, you're groomed into being a recruiter. So when we talked about this march and we talked to people that were in the life, they said, oh, you caught it at a good time because this is shopping season.
It is.
Parents need to know. And we know that the national agenda for sex trafficking, human trafficking is in January, and we honor that. Barack Obama put some things in place to make sure that's honored. We also want to honor that there are people here in this city like Reverend Q English who put this on the agenda of Bill de Blasio. We know GEMS have been working hard in legislation to pass some laws, but we got to do better.
Yes, we do.
We have to do more. We have to be aware. It comes with education, right? So we have an awareness, education, prevention. Awareness, education, prevention. And that's what we want to bring to this platform and to all our platforms, that we want to be informed, and we have to speak to our community about the violence going on in our community. There are people that are selling their kids to pay rent. They call it debt. Why? You say, why? Oh, how can somebody do that? That's so horrible. Because when you get yourself in a series of generational oppression and you don't think that there's a way out, you will do whatever you have to do. And if my body is what sells or my kid is what sells, I will do that. Not understanding the psychological ramifications for that, because you don't know where their frontal lobe is. You don't know if there's damage in the brain that causes it not to be as sharp. There are reasons for the things that we do, and trauma-informed communities need to be addressed. We've got to think about trauma and the impacts of trauma over long periods of time, generational trauma. The things that we say, I'm gonna mind my business, that girl, right? Stop all the time. She could be in trouble.
Yes.
And so one thing I think that we said was, this is a Sunday. We know it's Palm Sunday, but we want to do some prayer. We want to send affirmations of hope. We want to fly some balloons with affirmations on it. Maybe one girl will catch the balloon. I'm not saying that you're going to get out there and go, let's bust up all the trap houses in New York. That's dangerous. It's also dangerous to put literature in people's hands that you know may be trafficked. You've got to be really, really smart about this game. You've got to really understand the inner workings of this game, that everybody's working together to cover it up. So, for example, no Amber Alert, you talked about that, Katazia. Well, because Amber Alert works on having a license plate number. If you're being taken off the street or at a party, at a club, no license plate. So stop that.
And there's also the misconception that a big bad wolf just hops out of a van and take out girls. We know that's not how it happens.
Correct.
Someone goes and groom them and build a relationship with them that sometimes may seem genuine to people on the outside. And that's how this happens. Big bad wolf is not jumping out of a van and snatching out girls. Sometimes it does happen that way, but like Tony stated earlier, they're groomed into this. So we have to really, really understand how this happens.
But we groom them too, because it's some things like, go hug your uncle. Go give him a kiss, give her a kiss. Kids have their own boundaries, and they have to learn their natural boundaries. If they don't want to do that, don't make them do that. Sit on his lap, sit on her lap, go with her. Oh, she'll watch you. You got to know who's watching your kids.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so we have this thing called don't say anything. What's in this house stays in this house. Don't you say nothing about what's going on here. And we learned that a lot of the victims and survivors were sexually molested and abused and assaulted at young ages, boys and girls. So the guys that are also getting into the game were also sexually abused.
Approximately 74% of victims have been known to social services and the foster care system in New York City.
Wow. Wow. And we have to support this march.
We do. And I
really
think
important.
churches as well, there are a lot of churches who feel that the topic of sex trafficking is not, something that should be brought up. Some parents feel, let's not go into the schools and talk about sex trafficking because they're not even talking about sex education yet. That's the problem.
Right.
That is the problem.
Right.
If the person does not know any better, they're not going to do any better. We have to stop putting these boundaries and stop saying, we can't talk about this, we can't talk about that, these restrictions. Your kid needs to know as soon as your kid can talk that they can be taken. And you need to prevent that by teaching and educating your child so that they have a little bit more leeway. When they feel something not right, that they trust their instincts, that they tell someone, that they're going to get help. It's time to stop these games. It's time to get out there on Sunday, and it's time to march for every single person that's been oppressed by this modern-day slavery system.
Oh, let's
It's
take out
time.
modern. It's just slavery.
It's just a continuation.
It's just
Yes,
slavery.
yes,
And
yes.
we have to hold our the law, politicians, police, law enforcement accountable. Don't send me away. Don't send me away. Tell me where I can get help. Tell me where I can get help. Tell me, has this been a pattern? Tell me what I need to know. There's only 6 sex trafficking units in New York City. That's not enough.
It's insulting. That's
It's not
insulting.
enough.
Insulting.
And the laws for the Johns, the customers, are, come on.
Quite lenient, a slap on the wrist.
They
actually.
call it John School.
Yeah.
You go in there for a couple hours, you come back out.
Oh, we're going to put a stop to that.
That's going to stop and end today.
Because there's no supply, there's no demand. So let's just cut off the demand.